As Nigel said, I've been working on the circular economy for over 10 years, and over that time I've catalogued hundreds of innovations and startups. But despite all those exciting developments and the increasing interest from big businesses, our enormous global challenges of climate change, the death of nature, and social inequality are reaching tipping points. We're in the decisive decade. And today I'm going to highlight why continuing with business as usual is such a risky strategy for all of us. And then I'll outline what the circular economy is and why we need to focus on 3 essential strategies. Finally, I'll offer some tips on how we can all go circular in our own lives and businesses. So, we're sleepwalking into the future, not seeing the bigger picture and thinking we can just come up with technology fixes for green energy and carbon capture, and that will be enough. It's not. We're exploiting and destroying the life support systems we depend on. We're behaving as if there were still new frontiers to explore, where we can find yet more resources and yet more places to dump our waste and pollution out of sight. After thousands of years of human progress, and nearly 300 years since the first industrial revolutions, over the last 50 years our population and gross domestic product per person have doubled. But instead of getting more efficient, material use has gone up even faster. We now use around 100 billion tonnes of materials every year, and a sustainable level is less than half that. So 100 billion tonnes of resources every year going into the economy, and billions of tonnes of water. Extraction and processing of materials from farm to gate causes over 90% of water stress and destroys nature, and it causes over half of global greenhouse gas emissions. What's more, we waste nearly everything, recovering less than 9% at the end of use to make into new products. Our extraction of resources is now on such a massive scale that it's creating the climate emergency and leading to destruction of nature, which in turn is damaging our human health. You probably know that most extraction and farming of resources doesn't benefit all of us around the world. Things are becoming less fair. Wealthy societies and big businesses are consuming far more than our fair share of resources and destroying the living world that we all depend on. And yet, predictions show that we're going to extract much, much more. Population grows and more people will each use more resources. On current trends, our material footprint will more than double by 2060. We're using up ever more materials to make ever more products that we buy, use and then discard. We've designed a waste economy. You probably know that most extraction and farming of resources doesn't benefit all of us around the world. Things are becoming less fair. And yet predictions show that we're going to extract much, much more. Sorry, I lost the slide there. When we look at our capitalist system, we can see how everything's focused on growth, selling more stuff to more people. But planned obsolescence, preventing repairs, ever faster everything, is a system built on exploitation. Some people say we're colonising the future. And marketing is the secret sauce fueling our consumer culture. Sophisticated techniques using behavioural psychology and addiction tactics to persuade us that buying more stuff makes us happier. So we need a new system that keeps products and materials in the system, products that we use for longer and that we can use again and again. There are well over 100 definitions of a circular economy, and generally they share these common principles. The circular economy succeeds by redesigning products, business models and supply chains to keep things in circulation, so we create more value from less. It should also include making sure everything's safe and truly sustainable, regenerating resources and nature so we have abundance, not scarcity. It's about designing systems with limits, recognising that we're in a closed system with finite resources, land and water, and that there's nowhere to get rid of our waste and pollution. So how do we shrink our footprint? Instead of that linear economy based on take, make, use and then dispose, I think we should focus on 3 key strategies. Our first strategy is about designing products and business models to keep things in use for longer. Having durable, repairable, upgradable products, like the Fairphone. It means we don't need to replace things as quickly, and so we need fewer products and materials in the system. Our second strategy is designing products and business models so more people can use the same object. We can share things, rent them and pay per use. The result is we need less of them overall. Ride sharing is a great example. The average car in Europe is parked up for around 23 hours every single day. Ride sharing encourages people to use cars instead of owning them, meaning we need fewer cars in the overall system. And our third strategy is to recover everything, so we can use objects over and over again, reusing, repairing, remanufacturing, and finally recycling and regenerating materials for a new batch of products. Those first 2 strategies are critical, designing things to stay in use for longer, and designing systems to get more use, more productivity out of the same materials. Only those 2 strategies help shrink our resource footprint and through that lessen the associated emissions, waste and damage to nature. The Global Footprint Network makes it clear. Every year since 1970 we've been using the resources of more than one planet to fuel our lifestyles. We overshoot the biocapacity of our planet. And as we saw earlier, people with higher incomes have a bigger footprint. Our only solution is to consume less so we produce less and do less damage. We need a different mindset, switching from fast and forgettable to slow, savoured and sustainable lifestyles. We know from our experiences during the pandemic that community and being part of nature help us thrive. Instead, we've been coerced into working long hours, so we're exhausted, making us susceptible to being manipulated by marketers, using those behavioural psychology and addiction strategies. So, how can you be a circular change maker in your own life, at work, or serving your community? Here's my flywheel of change, building momentum and results with each cycle. You start by choosing something you really care about, say food, fashion, technology, or helping nature. What makes you cry when you think about what's going wrong? Then get curious. What's happening? What's going wrong? And what are the drivers? Dig into the real root causes. And what are the barriers to change, the constraints? This might be cost or cultural, or even that we're all being duped into being compliant consumers, buying stuff we don't need and don't really value. What choices can you make? There might be lots. Which ones are most practical or get you most excited? Next, it's time for planning and doing, and here there's a risk. The action-intention gap. So think carefully about what works for you. Are you the kind of person who could go vegan tomorrow? Or are baby steps better for you? You might start with meat-free Mondays. Don't forget to celebrate your first successes. That can help anchor your new habits, providing those dopamine rewards, the same ones marketers are wanting to trigger. And celebrating helps energize you for the next cycle. And at the heart of all of this are conversations. Talk to people about what's wrong and what we can do. Help build a movement for change. And maybe even go further. Turn your conversations into campaigns for change. I'd like to finish with this famous quote from the economist Kenneth Boulding. In his 1966 article, Boulding explains the difference between open systems and closed systems, highlighting problems caused by our delusion that we live in an open system with resources coming from outside the system and our waste and pollution being dealt with somewhere else. From a local perspective, that's possible, but of course at a global scale it can't work like that. It's now becoming clear to all of us that we're in a closed system with limited resources and sinks for our waste. And as Kenneth Boulding said, that means exponential growth cannot continue. Business can succeed and make profits by using different strategies. It means designing within the constraints of finite resources and creating a system where we need to regenerate everything we use, choose safe materials and waste nothing. Thinking about how to create value by first shrinking and then closing the loop on your products and materials. We need a different mindset and a better, circular and sustainable system. If you want to find out more about my work, please look me up at Rethink Global, and if you'd like to buy the book, there's a shameless plug and a discount code, and please have a listen to the Circular Economy podcast, and I've put a few extra resources in the slide pack. Thank you very much, and I'll look forward to questions later.